Okay friends, it's time to get started on our oil pan. Obviously, when you're doing the oil pan, you're going to have to drain the oil, so it only makes sense to do an oil change at the same time. Make sure you have a brand new oil filter and 3.9 quarts of 5W30 oil. Let's come over here to the oil cap, turn that counterclockwise and remove it from the engine. From underneath the vehicle, we have a clear view of the oil pan. Let's move right along the passenger side and remove the drain plug. It's important to make sure you're wearing hand and eye protection and you have a nice collection bucket under the area so you can recycle the fluid properly. At this point, we can take that drain plug and we're going to put it back in and just snug it up. Let's wipe down some of this oil. The next thing you want to do is pay attention along where the oil pan connects onto the engine. You want to make sure there isn't any dirt or debris. We don't want anything getting into the engine. Once you have it cleaned down, the next thing you want to do is start removing all of your mounting hardware. You're going to use a 10mm for this. You're going to find that there's several bolts and there's also a few nuts. I'll leave this one loose, continue on to my last. At this point, we've removed all of our hardware in exception of one of our mounting nuts. We can continue on by trying to pry the oil pan away from the engine. Obviously, you want to make sure you have your hand and eye protection and have a collection bucket under the area. There it is, friends. Let's wipe down the engine where the oil pan was, and then we'll continue on by removing the rest of the gasket that's on the engine. To get the gasket maker off of there, I'll use a flat razor blade and carefully remove it. Okay friends, let's get ready to install our brand new oil pan. To install this, you want to make sure you have it turned over so we have access to this area. Now what you want to do is either have a gasket meant for it or have some gasket maker. The gasket maker you use has to be oil resistant. I'm going to use some gasket maker and I'm going to make a clear bead making its way all the way around the oil pan. After that, I'll clean down the engine one more time and then apply this to the engine. Now I'll just smooth it out. Let's get back over to the vehicle. If you're using a gasket maker, it's important to make sure you leave no oily residue on the engine where the gasket maker is going to sit. The oil will make it so it doesn't make a proper seal. Let's take this and put it in place. We'll start putting in our mounting bolts. As we put in the mounting bolts, I'm only going to be starting them in by hand. I'm not going to tighten any of them until all of them are started. Now let's bottom each of the mounting bolts out. Once you have all of them bottomed out, torque each of them to 80 inch-pounds. Let's move along to the oil filter. Once you have your filter off of there, make sure you clean the base where the engine is. You want to make sure when you put the new oil filter on, you have a clean surface for it to mount to. Now it's going to be time to prime our brand new oil filter. We're going to take some brand new oil and we'll pour it right into the center hole. Once it seems as though it's coming out the top, you can stop filling it. We'll use our gloved finger, take some of that new oil and put it right along the gasket. Once you've done that, continue on by putting the oil filter on the engine. After you have it bottomed out by hand, turn it at least a quarter turn with your filter wrench. Double check to make sure it's tight. That feels good. Go ahead and clean down your mess. Now let's make our way back up to the top of the engine. Using a funnel, we'll continue adding the rest of our 3.9 quarts of 5W30 oil. All right, here's our last quart. We'll make sure that we only put in 0.9 quarts here. That looks close enough. Let's go ahead and put our oil cap on here. Now that we finished adding oil and put our cap on, let's go ahead and start up the car. Let it run for approximately 30 seconds and turn it off. The next thing we're going to do is check our oil level. We'll come right over here to the oil dipstick, twist this and lift it up. Go ahead and wipe it off. After you wipe it off, we're going to go ahead and put it back in there and check our level. Before we do, I want to talk to you about the oil dipstick. Looking at the dipstick itself, you can tell that it has an area that has hatches in it. When we check the oil level, we want to try to be up as close as possible to the top hatches. You never want to be above the hatches. There we are. As you can tell, I'm at the very top. The oil looks perfect. I'll put this back in. The next thing I always like to do is double check to make sure I don't have an oil leak. After that, you can go ahead and close the hood, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.